We just witnessed one of the best Heineken finals of all time. It was an absolute cracker. My name's Mark. Let's talk rugby. Leinster got off to the perfect start in this one, settling nerves early with a first-minute score. They've got a line-out in the La Rochelle half. They put a dummy pod up at the back of the line-out, but throw to Conan at the front. He bursts through a gap, draws the cover, and then puts Sheehan over to score. Rossburn converts this one. We're at 7-0 Leinster lead. James Lowe then kicks an amazing 50-22 right into the corner. Great disguise, I felt, from Leinster to kind of drag the defence as if they were going to go wide, and then just a brilliant kick from Lowe. La Rochelle knock on at the line out. It's a 5-metre scrum to Leinster. Leinster scrum looking fairly solid on their own feet early on, although that changes later in the game. Good carries from the likes of Doris, Lowe and Keenan. Then Jimmy O'Brien goes over in the corner. Conversion hits the post and stays out. It's 12-0. Lightning start from Leinster. La Rochelle then try to work their way back into the game. They're holding onto the ball. There are some big hits from Leinster, including ones from Henshaw on Dante, which absolutely rocked them. Then Keenan and Ringrose with some decent tackles as well. Van der Fleur gets over the ball and wins a penalty. Jameson Gibson Park goes quickly from the penalty. Kerr Barrow tackles him. He's knocked back 10. It's cynical, so he gets a yellow card. Leinster then use the penalty to get back into the 22, get themselves 10 meters out, and then Gibson Park puts Sheehan over in the corner. Ross Byrne again hits the post with his conversion attempt at 17-0. Either one of them going in could have been the difference, given how close it was at the end. But I feel that, with things like that, you can't know what's actually going to happen for the rest of the game. You can't just assume if that kick goes over, then that you just increase the Leinster final score by 2, and that's your final score. I think once something like that actually happens, going one way or the other, it completely changes how the rest of the game is going to play out, because then you would have had La Rochelle being the ones looking for that final score at the end and completely change the dynamic, even if the game played out pretty much the same the rest of the way. But from here then, La Rochelle, they go up to the line from a penalty and they have their first chance in the Leinster 22. Leinster managed to steal the ball in the maul. Great work from Conan there. But then Lowe drops an unsympathetic pass and La Rochelle have a 5-metre scrum. Aldrich then goes off the back of that advancing scrum, gets held up over the line. We come back then for a scrum penalty to La Rochelle. La Rochelle then get themselves over from the scrum. So basically, they get the ball in and out, get it to Dante. He has a bulldozing run, bounces off Ringrose, and then stretches out to score. It's converted by Hastoi, 17-7. Such a big kind of costly error from Leinster, really not being able to clear the ball after such great work turning it over. Just had to be a bit more kind of calm in that situation, I felt. But full credit to La Rochelle starting to work their way back into the game. Bottia, though, then gets pinged for not releasing after a good carry from Conan. Bottia, he was a menace at the breakdown. Sometimes it worked out for La Rochelle. This time it didn't. Ross Byrne strokes a penalty over 20-7. Dante then gets pinged for offside. It's another penalty to Leinster. They decide to go up the line and they're back into the Leinster 22. This, I think, was a big moment in the game because it certainly was a penalty they could have kicked for the post. Gibson Park, though, drops the ball as they look to spread it. Leinster, they're putting massive pressure on at the breakdown. They're pinning La Rochelle in their own half at this stage, and the pressure finally leads to another penalty. We have some handbags after this. James Ryan has to go off for an HIA, and Jason Jenkins comes on for him. Ryan, he'd made some big tackles, but his work at the rucks, like hit so many of them during the game, and just being able to clear out and make that Leinster ball a bit cleaner, and also help them to compete on the La Rochelle ball as well. He doesn't return to the field, and he's a big miss for the rest of the game. But back to the penalty then, Ross Byrne splits the post for 23-7. La Rochelle then, they maul to within 10 metres of the line, from the 10-metre line to just outside the 22, but then Bogarik gets pinged for holding on. Bit of a silly penalty to give away when they looked like they were building some momentum to come back into it. But then Bottia, great contribution from him, gets over the ball, wins the penalty, and even at that stage, I felt that his work at the breakdown would be one route for them to go back into the game if Leinster didn't protect their own ball. Leinster's defence then, though, they managed to force a knock-on and clear the ball. La Rochelle at this stage are finding it hard to have any extended possession in the Leinster territory, but that is obviously going to change later in the game. They do work themselves back to within 5 metres. What happens is we basically have like hectic passage of play. Ball comes off the knee on halfway of one of the La Rochelle players. Sheehan gathers it, but then he just offloads to nobody. La Rochelle kick it on. Keenan gets there and he's able to ground, but then from the dropout, La Rochelle worked their way back in, as I said, up to 5 metres. Skelton offload out on the right wing. He almost slades through, but Leinster scramble. But then La Rochelle hold on to the ball. They work it out to, that was on the right. Then they work it out to the left. And Sutini goes over in the corner. Astoy converts this one. We're at 23-14. And that's a halftime score. And Hastoy's kicking from the tee. I know a lot of other players like Aldreet had an amazing game, and like Bottia, as I mentioned. But Hastoy's coolness from the tee really was very important for La Rochelle in this one as well. He was kicking his points, whereas Byrne, tiny margins, but hitting the post twice from him. Then a break into the second half. We've got Sutini. He kind of slaloms through the Leinster defence, almost avoids the cover defence. He's deep in the 22. Gibson Park manages to snag him. Leinster, though, get pinged for offside. Astoy then makes it a one-score game and brings us back to 23-17. Leinster then win a scrum penalty in the La Rochelle 22. Alatoa just on for Furlong. Good contribution from him there for that one. Ross Byrne does the honours and makes it 26-17. Henshaw then gets pinged for hands on the ground after he put in a massive hit, but then was maybe a bit too enthusiastic trying to go after the ball, puts his hands on the ground. Hastoy puts this penalty over at 26-20, and La Rochelle, they're just not going away. This is an absolutely epic battle between two of probably the best teams that we've seen in Heineken Cup history. La Rochelle, they're applying pressure into Leinster 22 and look like they're in good position to strike, but then Sheehan throws the ball over and Leinster kick clear. La Rochelle being held out by Leinster, some great defence, but then Lowe kicks the ball out on the full, allows La Rochelle to come back into the 22. And some of Leinster's kicking was very poor in the game and very costly in terms of field position for them as well. The ball then gets ripped from Aldreet, but Lowe again slices his clearance, and La Rochelle are just able to kind of camp in there and keep up that pressure. From there, then they have some really hard carries from the likes of Dante, Bottia, and Skelton, and Leinster, I feel like they need to offer something going forward, and lift this siege, because defensive efforts are great, but eventually you're going to run out of tacklers, or they're going to get through somehow. And when you need to start chasing the game, then you just don't have it in the tank. And La Rochelle, they're just relentless. They maul it from outside of 22 to within 10 meters. Sorry, really great effort from them. They then splinter off, and some good work from Porter and Van der Fleer, making them playable. Turnover ball. They clear it, but then back to come again and trying to get out to the wide channels and exploit some space out there. But Dante spills the ball into touch. La Rochelle then work themselves back to the edge of the 22. Skelton, another big carry from him. Lowe just about hangs on to his ankles to stop him from going again. Then Leinster get in there and turn the ball over. But La Rochelle, they push Leinster off their own ball in the scrum, win a penalty there after that at the breakdown, and then they decide to go to the corner, win another penalty for collapsing the maul, go back to the corner. Leinster halt the maul, but it's illegal again. We're playing penalty advantage. Aldrich is held up over the line. Leinster hanging on, but only just. They're given a warning by Jaco Piper for too many penalties in the red zone. It's looking, like Leinster really are kind of creaking at this stage. La Rochelle, to go back to the corner. The SPAC splinters off the maul. He stopped just short in the corner. They work it in field, and then Colombe gets over to score. Hastoy converts this one 27-26. Leinster down to 14 as Kelleher gets a yellow card from the advantage and the fact that they'd been warned. Dante then shortly after gets a yellow card for his shoulder to Doris's head. Both teams are down to 14. Possibly could have been a red, but referee said that he felt it was an absorbing tackle and some of the force of it went through the chest. Either way, there's not long left in the game, so he's off for the rest of the game, whatever colour that card was going to be. Leinster decide to go to the corner from the penalty. Josh Van der Fleer has to throw into the line-out. He manages to hit his man. Leinster, they're just inside the 22. Natai then, some great work from him to get within a couple of meters. Leinster feel like they've got a score here. Got some big carries from the forwards. They then go out to the backs, but they lose it forward. And this feels like, maybe last chance saloon is over for them. Lodo carries back from the kick. And shortly after that, we have a stoppage for Colombe. He's absolutely just sparked out, unconscious on the ground, stretched out. And then we see the replays of why that is. Alatoa goes, a very dangerous clear out from him. He tucks the arm, it's shoulder to the head. It's absolutely a straight red. I have no doubt about that. And Leinster now down to 13 for the rest of the game. And it feels like, any chance of a comeback is gone now. If they had maybe a penalty or something there, they maybe could have done it, but at this stage it looks like it's La Rochelle's game. They just have to close it out, and they're able to do that. They kick it to touch first, then they win a penalty when Van der Fleer infringes at the line-out. They kick again up the line, they secure the line-out, they maul it, they run the clock down, get the ball off the field, and they are back-to-back champions. 27-26 is our final score. What an absolutely amazing comeback from them, and deserved double champions. Now, let's have a look at some of the stats from the game. So we start with possession. It was 42-58 in favour of Leinster. Like, Leinster had all of it their own way in the first, maybe 15 minutes or so. But after that, then it was just all La Rochelle. Like, Leinster found it very hard to get their hands on the ball. And when they did, they found it very hard to actually keep it. Territory 41% to 59. La Rochelle just absolutely relentless in that second half when they were going after the score to win. Didn't matter that Leinster were holding them out. The fact that they could just come back and get into position again meant that felt that they were confident that they were going to get that score eventually, meant that they didn't have to take too many chances and allow Leinster to maybe break upfield. Tries were 3 each. Leinster with the early scores in the first half, and then La Rochelle just chipping away at that lead until they got themselves in front. Defenders beaten 8 for Leinster, 16 for La Rochelle. La Rochelle really stretched that Leinster defence. Leinster scramble maybe not as good as we've seen it in the past, but there were some, decent scrambles all the same. When Gibson Park stopped Sautini from scoring what would have been like a wonder try, kind of sticks out. Scrum, 80% for Leinster, 100% for La Rochelle. La Rochelle never really under pressure in the scrum, conceded 1 penalty on the Leinster feed, but other than that, they were the ones, in control there. Leinster felt like they had to get the ball out as quickly as possible, and with that, then it was maybe messy ball, and they didn't really have the strike didn't have the opportunity to maybe run strike plays that they wanted to. Turnovers, 1 then, 10 for Leinster, 12 for La Rochelle. Dante, Aldrit, and especially Botia in there winning penalties, winning those turnovers. Leinster, with the likes of Van der Fleer, Porter as well towards the end, Sheehan in there too. But I think La Rochelle probably did the better work at the breakdown, being able to turn that ball over when Leinster were looking to break out in the second half was key to them keeping up that pressure. Tackles made, if we talk about pressure, 183 for Leinster, just 73 for La Rochelle. We've seen in, pretty much all the knockout games that Leinster played, that they're the team having to make more of the tackles, and it's something that they're not used to. They've been under immense pressure, and I think it shows that no matter how well they went through the rest of the season, when it came to knockout rugby and you needed to maybe adapt a little bit, maybe they didn't adapt as well as the teams playing them did. Penalties conceded then, 12 for Leinster, 8 for La Rochelle. I think this is one of the most important stats in the game, because basically when Leinster were defending and holding La Rochelle out, the problem was they were conceding penalties, which allowed La Rochelle to just reapply that pressure, keep them out again, another penalty, back to the corner, another penalty. And because of that, they could never really get a breather. Whereas La Rochelle, at the end there, where Leinster were coming for that final score, they were keeping them out, but they were not conceding the penalty that Leinster needed to kick for the win. And, I think that's the difference. La Rochelle kind of felt more comfortable in defence because Leinster weren't stretching them in that second half. They weren't putting any pressure on at all. And then when it came down to those last few minutes, when Leinster had to do it, do or die, 2 chances to do it. 1, knock the ball on. 2, stupid clear out from Ala Alatoa. But even with that, I felt that La Rochelle had the defence to maybe hold them out there, and Leinster would have had to have gone maybe for a drop goal rather than a penalty for the win. But yeah, I think La Rochelle's discipline and their defence were a big part in why they won this. In terms of the two teams now, so Leinster started so well, but offered very little in the final 50 minutes or so of the game. All that pressure from La Rochelle really told in the end. When they went for the possible drop goal at the end, as I said, La Rochelle were able to hold them out fairly comfortably. Obviously there were some pressure moments, but it wasn't forcing them to infringe. I feel like their ability to deliver in knockout rugby over the past 2 seasons is something that they're going to have to address if they're going to be able to get that coveted 5th star for the jersey. La Rochelle, they did so well turning it around. They had that nightmare start, which is absolutely blitzed by Leinster. We saw something similar happen with Toulon against Glasgow, and Glasgow just could not muster any kind of response. But La Rochelle are, just a team of a different caliber. They didn't panic when Leinster were holding them out, kept plugging away, and they got the scores that they needed. Then I think defending the Heineken Cup is one of the most difficult things that you can do in rugby, and La Rochelle now enter the pantheon of European rugby greats with this win.